It's day 532. It's also October 19th, 2020, and we are in Lincoln, Nebraska. You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life. Life out there. For visuals while listening, to watch the video versions of this podcast, or even just to say hey, check us out on our website at lifeoutthere.me. "98 miles. Just 2 hours or so. That's all that separates Craig, Missouri from Lincoln, Nebraska. But with 2 hours of road stretched out in front of me, that's the kind of time that lets my mind get stuck. Stuck in that loop again. Everything I just watched on the news the night before. Everything I just couldn't shake. But that update last night, the numbers scrolling across the screen, cases, deaths, graphs, spiking higher and higher. We're 7 months in to a global pandemic. And the reality of that, well, seems pretty clear to me. But this time it's not the reality of this pandemic rolling around in my head. It's more about where we are as a country, where we're going, who's leading us, and the consequences of the decisions we make. A grifter, a con man, a reality television star, and a pathological liar. And somehow, he's a president of the United States. 4 years of this. He just expects us all to forget during the chaos of a pandemic that he continues the stacking of the Supreme Court. He packs thousands of maskless supporters into rallies during this global pandemic. The fact that the very election that put him into office was found to be manipulated by a foreign interest. The fact that he's already been impeached once, and it looks like he's headed for a second. All of this sticking with me as the miles ticked by. Field after field rolling past the window. I think I've literally gotten to the point in which if a news headline, a report, a video, if a sentence begins with the word Trump, I just turn it off. Self-preservation, I think. Figuring out a way to stay informed, but not inundated with all of his nonsense. I guess in the end, I'm just riding out the next few days. Another 15 days or so, and Americans get to vote again. And hopefully this dumpster fire we call Trump and MAGA, well, I don't know that they'll go away, but at least I hope they won't be in charge of our future anymore. The road into Nebraska is flat and steady. You don't notice the state line so much as you feel the transition. Missouri fades. Nebraska picks up, almost seamless. Lancaster County first, and then the approach into Lincoln. And it's incredibly obvious, incredibly fast, the impact of this pandemic on a larger city versus the small ones that we'd spent most of our time in. Lincoln, I thought, should feel alive. It's the state capital. The University of Nebraska's here, the Cornhuskers. A city that would usually hum with students, sports, politics, commerce, life. But when we rolled into town, the hum was gone. O Street, the lifeline through the heart of the city, the longest main street in the United States. But it felt muted. Fewer cars, fewer people on the sidewalks. Even the Capitol building, another of Nebraska's claims to fame, the second tallest Capitol building in the country, towering and distinct against an otherwise flat horizon. But it looked more like a monument than a living seat of government. Even the International Quilt Museum, normally a quirky but celebrated draw, the world's largest collection of handmade quilts, shuttered. Signs on the door pointing to safety. And so many of the restaurants along O Street sitting quiet, chairs stacked on tables, doors locked. It reminded me of Craig back there in Missouri, only scaled up. Same hollowness, same absence of life. Just bigger buildings, more empty pavement. We'd set out to find a place to park for a few days. That's no easy task in this part of the country. In October, even without a pandemic at hand. As we'd learned back there in Tekamah, many of the parks around here shut down for the winter. The ones that remain open? Well, they'd done the same thing we'd seen back there in Fargo. They'd closed off every other parking spot in order to enforce social distancing, and at the same time, cutting their capacity in half. So after coming up short at the couple of RV parks that were open, we'd set out to find the Nebraska Book Company, that gig I'd signed up for. I was scheduled to start tomorrow, so we'd try our luck on that side of town. And we found it pretty easy. No problem parking there during the day, plenty of space. But I still had to find a spot to park overnight. When, oddly enough, or maybe just fate, we'd drive just up the street and around the corner from the book company when we passed by a massive and empty parking lot, surrounding what looked like a big corporate office of some sort. But what caught our eye was the back row of parking stalls, 20 or so, with power poles. At first I thought maybe charging stations for electric vehicles? But then I learned that the power poles were equipped with 110 outlets only, 2 per stall. And they were powered up. We backed into one, plugged in, and after a quick walk with Dougie, I headed up to that big office building to ask about renting a piece of their empty parking lot for a few days. But, just like the parking lot, the building was empty. They'd moved, cleaned the place out. But to where? No signs, no one to ask. So we hung out for the afternoon, waiting. A security patrol of some sort, maybe? A police officer to drive by? A car, period, to drive by? But nothing. No one. Pandemic, I wondered? Or just part of this industrial park area of Lincoln transitioning? And we'd also spend some time learning about this place. And Lincoln wasn't always Lincoln. Back in the 1850s, it was just another frontier village, this one called Lancaster, a scattering of settlers on the Salt Creek. And then came statehood in 1867, and with it, the fight over where to put the capital. Omaha had been holding that title, but the balance of power had shifted west. Lancaster won the bid, and almost overnight the village was renamed Lincoln. Not everyone was thrilled with the choice. Naming it after the fallen president was a calculated move. Some of the Southern sympathizers in the legislature had hoped that it would sour the vote. But it didn't. The name stuck. And just like that, a quiet little salt flat settlement grew into Nebraska's seat of government. And that Capitol building, the one that rises above everything else now, well, it's not the original. The first 2 versions crumbled, wore out. And the current tower, that soaring limestone landmark that you can see from miles away, well, it was finished in the 1930s, a symbol meant to last. And by then, the university had already taken root. The railroads had tied Lincoln to the rest of the Midwest, and the place had come alive. Politics, education, trade. From salt flats to a busy state capital in less than one lifetime. And our afternoon of waiting around for someone to talk to, well, that had turned into 3 days. We were in a perfect spot. Each morning at 7 o'clock, we'd head less than a mile up the road just round the bend to the book distributor. Day 1, orientation. A tour around the place, a bunch of paperwork, and I was off and running. And it was pretty cool to see today's technology blended into a generations-old business. The business of shipping books, all across the country. Mainly, it seemed, to colleges and resellers. I'd be given an Android phone preloaded with the company's software and a little infrared reader that was Velcroed to my index finger. Armed with a handcart, we'd check the phone for orders, run up and down those caverns of books, scanning barcodes with the infrared reader and loading the handcart. And then it was off to the shipping area to deposit the handcart full of books for the next person to package up and take to the loading docks. And all the while, checking the leaderboards. That was also pretty cool. Each time I filled an order, the leaderboard would display the number of titles that I had moved from the storage areas to the shipping department. And it was fun trying to keep my name at the top of that leaderboard. But halfway through day 2, things took a bit of a twist. I'd signed up for 4 shifts, 4 days. But in typical Midwest fall fashion, the weather was taking a turn. It looked like Lincoln was about to see some freezing rain, snow even. And it looked like we were going to have to make a break for it sooner than expected. So, one last night in Lincoln, and right across the street from our little space on that massive parking lot, the Nebraska Farm Bureau Lincoln headquarters. That place was lit up like a Christmas tree at night, but no signs of life otherwise. And a quick read on the internet would tell me that the Bureau is 60,000 farming families strong. I thought about that number for a second. 60,000 farmers. It's an organization that's been around for more than a century now, advocating, educating, and fighting for the folks who put food on the table of families not just here, but all across the country. I'd also done some looking on the internet trying to figure out who owned this spot that we were parked on. Google Maps just calls it surplus land, which was pretty weird, I thought. A massive, but empty, and not that old corporate complex of some sort, complete with powered-up parking stalls and acres of parking. And it's surplus? A little more digging, and I think I figured out that the building used to be occupied by the Lincoln Electric System, the power company that services the city. I called the numbers that I found online, but nothing. Automated messages and leaving voicemails. I mean, tried to pay. Seems pretty fitting, I suppose, that if we're going to get some free power for a couple days, it would come directly from the power company itself. Oh well, maybe they'll call us back one day. And that last click of the evening, well, that had us reading about another interesting Nebraska factoid. The Nebraska National Forest. Yep, in Nebraska, a state I think most people picture as endless cornfields and prairie grass. But it's also home to a national forest, established in 1908, and today it stretches across more than 140,000 acres in 2 ranger districts, the Bessie and the Pine Ridge. The Bessie district, out in the Sandhills, well, that might just be the wildest experiment that I'd never heard of. In the early 1900s, a University of Nebraska professor named Charles Bessie had this crazy idea. Plant a forest where there wasn't one. Thousands of acres of hand-planted trees. And it worked. A man-made forest in the middle of the prairie. Still standing, still growing, and still producing millions of seedlings every year. And then there's the Pine Ridge District, up in the northwest corner. That one's more like the real deal, Mother Nature style. Ponderosa pines, rugged bluffs, the Soldier Creek wilderness, wide open spaces where you can still feel what the frontier must have felt like. Together, these two places, part experiment and part natural wonder, make up one of the most unexpected things about Nebraska, a national forest in the heart of the Great Plains. We wrapped up the evening doing some more reading on the internet, and an updated weather forecast told us that cold snap and freeze was getting closer by the minute, speeding up. A chance encounter on a chat board with a friendly guy named Jerry. He'd invite us for a stay in a town called Western, just 60 miles from where we sat. He told us that Western had a small community park, complete with 2 full RV hookups and open year-round. He said both spaces were empty. Come have a stay, he said, ride out the next couple of days' weather all plugged in and warm. Yeah, I thought, we'll make a break for it early tomorrow morning. Headed for a place called Western. And I wonder what we'll learn there. This thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously. You can.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.